Commander Amy Kowalski strode into Lecture Hall 17 at the Galactic Military Academy, her worn leather boots clicking against the polished titanium floor. The sound echoed through the cavernous space like tiny gunshots, which was oddly appropriate given today's topic. She dropped her datapad onto the podium with a satisfying thunk and surveyed her audience of 23 cadets representing 12 different species from across the known galaxy. "Good morning, future defenders of galactic peace," Amy announced, her voice dripping with just enough sarcasm to make the Zeltharian in the front row shift nervously. "Welcome to Introduction to Human Mythological Warfare Tactics, also known as why you should never believe everything you read on the galactic net about those adorable little pink things from Sol 3. A chorus of chittering, buzzing, and what sounded suspiciously like snorting came from her diverse audience. The massive Corvan cadet in the back row, easily 8 feet tall with chitinous armor plating, let out a rumbling laugh that shook the nearby desks. "Now, I know what you're all thinking," Amy continued, pulling up her first holographic display with a theatrical flourish. "Humans? Really? Those tiny, squishy bipeds who can barely lift their own body weight. The species that gets sunburned from their own star and needs to cover 90% of their skin just to survive in most environments." More laughter rippled through the classroom. A Vorthan cadet with 6 arms raised 3 of them simultaneously. "Instructor Kowalski, are we seriously supposed to believe that humans pose any kind of military threat? I mean, no offense, but you're like really small and pink, and you don't even have proper claws." Amy's grin could have powered a small starship. "None taken, Cadet Zixtar, wasn't it? And you're absolutely right. Humans are pathetically weak by galactic standards. We have no natural armor, no built-in weapons, no psychic abilities. And our lifespans are laughably short. We're basically the equivalent of mobile snack food for most apex predators in the galaxy." She activated the holographic projector, filling the air above the students with a 3-dimensional battlefield. Tiny humanoid figures moved across a landscape that looked suspiciously detailed for something that was supposedly mythological. So naturally. Amy continued, gesturing to the display, when humans allegedly fought in something called the Battle of Thermopylae, where 300 warriors supposedly held off an army of hundreds of thousands. Well, that's obviously complete nonsense, right? I mean, the math alone doesn't work. 300 versus several hundred thousand? Please. The students nodded knowingly. Basic tactical analysis was first-year material. "And this other story," Amy said, switching to a new hologram showing what appeared to be humans in primitive aircraft engaging much more advanced-looking vessels, where human pilots in flying machines held together with rivets and prayers supposedly took on technologically superior forces during something called the Battle of Britain? Pure fantasy. No species that primitive could possibly have the tactical acumen to outmaneuver superior technology. Cadet Brandon Torres, whose reptilian features reminded Amy uncomfortably of Earth's extinct velociraptors, hissed with amusement. "Instructor Kowalski, these human myths are quite entertaining, but surely even primitive species can come up with better stories than these? I mean, if you're going to make up legends about your prowess in battle, why not at least make them believable?" "An excellent point, Brandon," Amy replied, her smile never wavering. "I suppose humans have never been particularly good at realistic fiction. Take this next one, for example." The hologram shifted to show what appeared to be humans in environmental suits moving through the vacuum of space, engaging in combat around a massive space station. According to human mythology, their species once built something called the International Space Station while they were still confined to their home planet. They supposedly lived and worked in the vacuum of space for months at a time, conducting experiments and maintaining equipment in conditions that would kill most species in minutes. But of course, we all know that's impossible. Humans need atmosphere, warmth, and constant protection from radiation. They're far too fragile for space operations. A few of the cadets were starting to look slightly less amused. The Corvan in the back raised a massive claw. "Instructor, these holographic recreations are remarkably detailed for mythological stories. Where exactly did this data come from? Amy's expression remained perfectly neutral. Oh, you know how it is with legends, Cadet Morn. Stories get embellished over time. Someone probably spent way too much time making these look realistic for some historical documentary project. Humans do love their fiction. She glanced at her chronometer and noticed she had 17 minutes before her next appointment. Plenty of time to get to the really good stuff. Now then, Amy said, rubbing her hands together with mock enthusiasm, let's talk about one of my personal favorite human myths. The legend of persistence hunting. The holographic display shifted to show primitive humans running across a vast savanna, following what appeared to be large, four-legged creatures at a steady pace. According to this completely fabricated story, Amy continued, early humans would select a prey animal, something fast and strong, and then simply follow it. Not sprint after it, mind you. Just jog for hours, sometimes days. The idea being that eventually the prey would collapse from exhaustion while the humans just kept going. The laughter from her audience was immediate and boisterous. The Vorthan cadet with 6 arms was practically vibrating with mirth. The instructor, that's the most ridiculous hunting strategy I've ever heard. Any predator worth its DNA would either ambush its prey or outrun it in a quick burst. What kind of evolutionary dead end would waste that much energy on a maybe? Right? Amy agreed cheerfully. It makes no sense from a biological perspective. I mean, look at humans. They're clearly built for short-term survival, not endurance activities. They overheat easily, they need constant hydration, and their limbs are so poorly designed that they can't even run on 4 legs properly. She switched the hologram to show what appeared to be thousands of humans running together along paved roads, many of them appearing to be middle-aged or older. This next myth is even more absurd, Amy said, gesturing to the display. Humans supposedly developed something called marathon running where they would voluntarily run 26.2 miles just for fun. Not to escape predators, not to catch prey, just because they felt like it. Brandon Torres hissed again, his forked tongue flicking out in amusement. 26 miles? Instructor Kowalski, even our military training runs are only 5 miles and we're built for speed and endurance. Surely even mythological humans wouldn't be that masochistic. Oh, it gets better, Amy said, her grin widening. According to these legends, some humans would run what they called ultramarathons. 50 miles, 100 miles. Some supposedly ran for 24 hours straight, just to see how far they could go. The classroom erupted in disbelieving laughter. The massive Corvan cadet was shaking his armored head. Instructor, I think whoever created these myths might have been consuming fermented vegetation. No biological organism would waste that much energy without a survival-based reason. Amy nodded sagely. You'd think so, wouldn't you? But wait, there's more. The persistence-hunting myths get even more outrageous. She changed the display to show what appeared to be enormous furry creatures with massive curved tusks. These are called mammoths. Massive creatures, easily 10 times the size of a human, with natural armor in the form of thick hide and fur, and weapons that could impale multiple attackers at once. The students leaned forward, intrigued despite themselves. According to human mythology. Amy continued, their ancestors didn't just hunt these creatures. They allegedly hunted them to extinction. Not with advanced technology, mind you, but with pointed sticks and the occasional sharp rock. The story goes that humans would track mammoth herds for weeks, following them through ice and snow, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The laughter was becoming more nervous now. Cadet Torres tilted his scaled head. Instructor, that's actually a fairly detailed extinction scenario. Those species that create myths about hunting usually focus on individual heroic kills, not systematic elimination of entire species. Oh, Brandon, you're absolutely right, Amy said, her tone becoming slightly less jovial. And the really strange thing about these human myths is how specific they get about the timeline. They claim to have eliminated mammoths approximately 12,000 years ago, right around the time they were supposedly developing agriculture. A few of the students were no longer laughing. The details were becoming uncomfortably precise for folklore. The persistence hunting myths also include exact caloric calculations, Amy continued, pulling up what appeared to be complex mathematical models. Energy expenditure rates, optimal pursuit speeds, hydration requirements. It's almost like someone actually studied the biomechanics involved. The Zeltharian in the front row raised a tentacle nervously. Instructor Kowalski, these calculations appear to be genuine scientific analysis. Are we certain these are mythological accounts and not historical documents? Before Amy could answer, her communication device chimed with an incoming priority message. She glanced at the display and her expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Excuse me for just a moment, class. The holographic projector activated automatically, showing the stern face of Judge Quintara, the Galactic Military Tribunal's chief prosecutor. Her crystalline features were set in an expression that could have flash-frozen a small moon. Commander Kowalski, Judge Quintara's voice carried easily through the classroom's audio systems. I need to speak with you regarding your upcoming declassification hearing. Are you available for immediate consultation? Amy's students fell completely silent. The title commander hung in the air like an unexploded ordnance. Of course, Judge Quintara, Amy replied smoothly, though several of her students noticed that her casual demeanor had shifted into something far more professional. I can spare a few minutes. Class, please review the materials on persistence hunting while I handle this administrative matter. But the damage was done. 23 pairs of alien eyes were now looking at their harmless human instructor with considerably more interest and significantly less amusement. Amy finished her brief conversation with Judge Quintara and turned back to her increasingly suspicious students with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Sorry about that, class. Now, where were we? Yes, human myths about adaptability. She activated a new holographic sequence showing humans in what appeared to be a frozen wasteland, temperatures so low that the very air seemed to shimmer with ice crystals. This next collection of stories is particularly amusing, Amy said, though her voice had lost some of its earlier lightness. Humans supposedly developed the ability to survive in environments that would kill most galactic species within minutes. Take this tale of Arctic exploration, for instance. The hologram showed humans wrapped in primitive furs, pulling sleds across endless expanses of ice and snow. According to this myth, humans not only survived in temperatures of -40 degrees Celsius, but actually chose to live there permanently. They built entire settlements in regions where liquid water exists only in a heated state. Moran, the insectoid cadet whose compound eyes had been tracking every detail of the presentation, clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. Instructor Kowalski, these environmental readings in your display, they include specific atmospheric pressure measurements, wind speed calculations, and solar radiation data. That's remarkably precise for folklore. Amy's pause was barely perceptible, but several students caught it. Well, Moran, you know how humans love their technical specifications, even in their fictional accounts. She switched the display to show humans crossing vast desert landscapes, their skin protected only by light cloth wrappings. This myth claims humans survived in environments reaching 50 degrees Celsius, with humidity levels near zero and solar radiation that would blind most species. Supposedly. They developed techniques for finding water in completely arid environments and could survive for days without liquid intake. The Corvan cadet raised a claw again. Instructor, my species evolved in high-temperature environments, and even we require environmental suits for those conditions. How would a soft-skinned species possibly adapt to such extremes? An excellent question, Amy replied, pulling up what appeared to be detailed biological schematics. According to these myths, humans developed something called thermoregulation through liquid secretion. They would leak water through their skin to cool themselves down. Brandon Torres's scaled head tilted skeptically. That's actually not a terrible cooling mechanism. Inefficient, but functional. Are we sure this is mythological? Before Amy could respond, she switched to an underwater scene showing humans in primitive diving equipment descending into ocean depths. And then there's this collection of stories about humans exploring underwater environments. Supposedly, they developed technology to carry their atmosphere with them and could descend to crushing depths that would implode most species. The footage showed humans walking on what appeared to be an ocean floor, surrounded by bizarre alien-looking creatures. Morden, the gaseous species whose form shimmered with barely contained energy, pulsed with sudden interest. Instructor, those depth pressure readings I'm familiar with underwater environments from my homeworld's ocean systems. Those measurements indicate pressures that would require significant technological advancement to survive. Amy's smile became increasingly strained. Yes, well, humans have always been creative with their storytelling. She activated another sequence showing humans in bulky white suits moving across the surface of what appeared to be an airless moon. This myth is particularly far-fetched. Humans supposedly left their home planet and walked on the surface of their moon in complete vacuum, with only primitive life support systems. The classroom had grown noticeably quieter. The students were no longer laughing. Moran's mandibles clicked rapidly. Instructor, that footage includes telemetry data, life support readings, and communication transcripts with exact timestamps. July 20th, 1969, Earth calendar. That's incredibly specific for mythology. And added the Vorthan cadet, the physics of those rocket propulsion systems appear to be completely accurate. I've studied orbital mechanics, and those trajectories are mathematically sound. Amy pulled up an even more impressive display showing what appeared to be humans constructing massive structures in the vacuum of space, working in teams to assemble something that looked suspiciously like a functional space station. According to this myth, she said, humans spent decades building permanent habitations in space, rotating crews through 6-month deployments, conducting scientific experiments in zero-gravity environments that most species find completely disorienting. Morden's gaseous form brightened with realization. Wait. Instructor Kowalski, I've seen this before. This isn't mythology. This is archival footage from the Terran Space Development Program. This is actual historical documentation. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Amy's communication device chimed again, this time with an emergency priority signal. Commander Kowalski, came a new voice through the speakers. This is Admiral Vashi. We need you to report to the Declassification Tribunal immediately. Your status has been upgraded to urgent review. Amy looked at her chronometer. 12 minutes until her hearing. Class, I'm afraid we're going to have to cut today's session short. Please review chapters 12 through 15 in your textbooks about mythological warfare tactics. But none of her students moved. 23 pairs of alien eyes were now staring at her with expressions ranging from suspicion to outright alarm. Instructor Moran said slowly, or should I say, Commander, exactly how mythological are these human stories? Amy's professional smile finally cracked completely. Well, that's certainly an interesting question, isn't it? Amy cleared her throat and attempted to regain her composure, though sweat beads were now clearly visible on her forehead. Right then, let's move on to what I personally consider the most ridiculous human myth of all, the legend of pack bonding. She activated a new holographic display showing humans interacting with various alien species, some of which her students recognized from their own homeworlds. According to this completely unbelievable tale. Amy continued, her voice slightly higher than before. Humans have an inexplicable tendency to form emotional attachments with virtually any species they encounter. The stories claim they will adopt, protect, and even risk their lives for creatures that provide no tactical or survival advantage whatsoever. The hologram showed a human feeding what appeared to be a small, furry creature with large eyes. This myth suggests that humans would take in wounded or abandoned animals from other species, spending their own resources to nurse them back to health, and then keeping them as companions for years or even decades. Brandon Torres hissed softly. That's actually not that unusual. Many species form symbiotic relationships. Ah, but here's where it gets truly absurd, Amy said, switching to footage of humans standing between what appeared to be armed forces and groups of various alien species. These stories claim that humans would actually defend other species against superior military forces even when they had no treaty obligations or strategic benefits to gain. The Zeltharian in the front row raised a tentacle. Instructor, those weapons in the hologram, those are actual hegemony military-grade plasma rifles. How would mythological stories include accurate technical specifications for classified military equipment? Before Amy could answer, her communication device erupted with an urgent priority override. The massive holographic display flickered and suddenly showed the stern face of Admiral Vashi, his 4 eyes focusing directly on Amy with unmistakable authority. Commander Kowalski, Admiral Vashi's voice boomed through the classroom speakers. We have a situation. Your declassification status has been moved to immediate emergency review. The tribunal is convening in 8 minutes. Amy's face went pale. Admiral, I'm currently in the middle of a class session. Commander, the Admiral interrupted, this is not a request. Your teaching assignment is hereby suspended pending tribunal review. Report to conference room Alpha immediately. The communication cut off, leaving the classroom in stunned silence. 23 alien faces stared at Amy with expressions of growing realization and barely concealed panic. The Corvan cadet's armor plating was actually rattling with nervous energy. So, Amy said weakly, attempting a casual laugh that came out more like a strangled wheeze, I suppose this would be an awkward time to mention that I might need to step out a few minutes early today. Her communication device chimed again, this time with the unmistakable deep voice of Admiral Drohorn, whose reputation for tactical brilliance was matched only by his reputation for having zero patience for bureaucratic delays. Commander Kowalski, Admiral Drohorn's holographic image materialized above the projector. Your combat classification files have been flagged for immediate public release. Are you currently in a secure location? Amy looked around at her classroom full of increasingly terrified alien cadets. Define secure, sir. Commander, are there any civilians present who lack appropriate security clearance for your actual military record? The silence in the room was so complete that Amy was fairly certain she could hear Morden's gaseous form trembling. Well, sir, Amy said slowly, that would depend entirely on what exactly is being declassified. Admiral Drohorn's expression could have frozen liquid nitrogen. Your complete service record, Commander? Including your operational history with the Terra Defense Forces, your confirmed kill count, and your specialization in xenological combat tactics. Moran's compound eyes began reflecting light in a pattern that Amy recognized as the insectoid equivalent of hyperventilation. Instructor, I mean Commander, exactly how many missions have you completed? Amy glanced at her chronometer. 4 minutes until her tribunal hearing. Her students were all staring at her with the kind of expression typically reserved for apex predators who had just revealed their true nature. You know what, class? Amy said, gathering her datapad and heading toward the door. Let's just call this a practical demonstration of why you should never assume you fully understand a species based on their mythology. Consider it homework to research the actual historical accuracy of everything we've discussed today. She paused at the door and turned back to her students with one final, genuinely apologetic smile. Oh, and for next week's assignment, you might want to start with the myth about humans being peaceful. The sound of 23 different species simultaneously attempting to exit the classroom was quite impressive. Unfortunately for Amy's students, their mass exodus was interrupted by the sudden appearance of General Kraftnog's holographic form blocking the classroom exit. The general's imposing figure, easily 12 feet tall with enough battle scars to qualify as a geological survey, commanded immediate attention. Attention all civilian personnel. General Kraftnog's voice carried the authority of someone who had personally conquered 3-star systems before breakfast. This facility is now under emergency lockdown protocols. Any individual without Level 7 security clearance must evacuate immediately to designated safe zones. The students froze like prey animals caught in the open. Moran's mandibles were clicking so rapidly they sounded like a malfunctioning data processor. General, Amy said, her voice now carrying an entirely different tone of professional military bearing, my students were just leaving. This was supposed to be a simple mythology class. General Kraftnog's 4 eyes focused on Amy with what might have been amusement. "Commander Kowalski, your declassification hearing has been accelerated. As of this moment, your cover assignment as an academy instructor is officially terminated. Your actual service record is now public information." The color drained from every alien face in the room. Brandon Torres made a sound that his species typically reserved for imminent death scenarios. "Well then," Amy said, dropping her teaching persona entirely, "I suppose there's no point maintaining the fiction anymore." She turned to her students with a grin that was equal parts apologetic and predatory. "Class, I have a confession to make. Those weren't myths." Before anyone could respond, Quartermaster burst through the classroom door, carrying what appeared to be enough military hardware to outfit a small invasion force. "Commander, your gear, as requested. The full tactical loadout, including the modified plasma rifle array and the experimental close combat enhancement suit." Amy accepted a helmet that looked like it had been designed by someone with a very intimate understanding of efficient killing. "Thanks, Quartermaster. How much time do I have?" 2 minutes to tribunal, Commander. "They're waiting for your testimony regarding the Andromeda incident." Morden's gaseous form was now vibrating at frequencies that suggested either complete terror or an impending phase transition. "The Andromeda incident? You mean the one where an entire hegemony battle fleet just disappeared?" Amy paused in the process of strapping on what appeared to be enough weaponry to level a small city. "Oh, that. Yeah, that was a Tuesday. Pretty routine stuff, actually." The Vorthan cadets' 6 arms were all pointing toward the exit in a universal gesture of wanting to be anywhere else. "How many confirmed kills do you have, Commander?" Amy considered this question while adjusting her tactical harness. "Well, if we're counting individual combatants, it's somewhere around 43,000. But if we're including ship-to-ship actions," she paused to do some mental arithmetic. "Let's just say the Galactic Census Bureau had to revise their population estimates for several star systems." The stampede toward the exit was immediate and comprehensive. 23 different species discovered they could move considerably faster than their evolved biology suggested when properly motivated. "Wait," Amy called after them cheerfully, "don't you want to know about the myth where humans allegedly never surrender? Or the one about what happens when you threaten their pack-bonded companions?" The only response was the sound of rapidly retreating footsteps and what might have been whimpering in several different languages. Amy looked around the now empty classroom and shrugged. Well, that could have gone worse. At least nobody asked about the Geneva Convention myths. She gathered her remaining equipment and headed toward the door, pausing only to make a note on her datapad. "Teaching evaluation," she muttered to herself. "Definitely room for improvement on student retention. But full marks for practical demonstration of human unpredictability." General Kraftnog's hologram flickered with what passed for amusement among his species. "Commander, the tribunal is waiting." "On my way, sir," Amy replied. "Just remember, if anyone asks, humans are totally peaceful. We're just really bad at it." 3 days later, the Galactic News Network led with their top story: Human Revelation Incident Causes Academy-Wide Therapy Sessions. The holographic news anchor, a dignified Centaurian with impressive credentials in interspecies journalism, maintained professional composure while reporting. The incident began as a routine mythology class and ended with what military analysts are calling the most significant intelligence revelation since the Hegemony Wars. Cut to interview footage with Moran, whose compound eyes were still twitching nervously. "We thought we were learning about fictional human stories. Then we realized our instructor had personally killed more sentients than some plagues. I haven't slept properly since. Every time I close my eyes, I see her casually mentioning genocidal mathematics like she was discussing the weather." Brandon Torres appeared next, his scaled features drawn with exhaustion. The worst part wasn't learning that humans were dangerous. The worst part was realizing she'd been teaching us their actual military tactics disguised as mythology. "I've been unconsciously memorizing human combat doctrine for weeks." The Corvin cadet's interview was brief but memorable. Humans are terrifying. End of statement. Meanwhile, the news report continued. Commander Amy Kowalski has been reassigned to teach advanced human combat tactics to senior military officers, a course that now has a waiting list of over 3,000 applicants from across the galaxy. The camera switched to show Amy in her new classroom, this time filled with hardened military veterans from dozens of species, all taking notes with the desperate intensity of beings who had suddenly realized they'd been dramatically underestimating a potential threat. Today we'll be covering human psychological warfare techniques. Amy announced to her new students, starting with something humans call trash talk and progressing to advanced demoralization tactics. For homework, I want you to research human entertainment called horror movies and write a report on how they use recreational fear conditioning. A grizzled hegemony war veteran raised a tentacle. Commander, is it true that humans voluntarily expose themselves to simulated terror scenarios for amusement? Amy's grin was answer enough. The news report concluded with an interview with Admiral Vashi. The human revelation incident has forced us to completely revise our threat assessment protocols. We're now requiring all military personnel to attend mandatory seminars on human behavioral patterns. Frankly, we're just grateful they appear to be on our side. Back in her new office, Amy was preparing her next lesson plan when she noticed a news ticker scrolling across her wall display. The Outer Rim Coalition still maintains humans are mythological despite mounting evidence. Amy chuckled and made a note in her planner. Next semester, guest lecture for the Coalition Academy. Topic: Why humans definitely don't exist, featuring live demonstrations of non-existent human capabilities. She leaned back in her chair, satisfied. Teaching was turning out to be much more entertaining than she'd expected, especially when her students actually believed the curriculum. After all, the best part about being a human in a galaxy that didn't quite believe in humans was that you could always claim the really impressive stuff was just elaborate mythology. Until it wasn't.